Segment 3, our favorite, up for debate this week. Alexis, you decided to go against the biggest reason for the 4-game slump that the Minnesota Wild are currently on. I had to literally just do that math in my head. I'm like, it's 4 games,
Yeah.
right? Where I'm 4. I haven't changed that board in a while, I don't think, so I'm not sure. But biggest reason, you had mentioned postponements or kind of the lack of that regular scheduling routine. Goaltending.
You're excited about that, I'm sure.
Lack of depth scoring. Why don't you kick it off? What do you think is ailing the Minnesota Wild on this recent slump?
Well, I feel like saying that cancellations, postponements, and kind of the wrench being thrown in the schedule is kind of like a cop out saying, of like, oh yeah, they're not playing well. Cause it's like everyone's dealing with that. So I feel wrong citing that as like the main reason. I definitely think it has affected every team in some way, shape, or form, but I think it's unfair to say that's the reason the Wild haven't been doing well, or haven't been picking up wins lately. Just because again, everyone's dealing with that. And at the end of the day, you should be able to put that aside and go play a game when you're told to go play a game and still
when it's your job,
well.
probably, right? Yeah.
Just go out and win. Don't worry about if you didn't practice yesterday or the last game was canceled. So I kind of threw that one out the window, but I think it's a fun argument. For me, I think the biggest reason the Wild have struggled a little bit is the lack of depth scoring. And I was looking through some of the past scores because, these games all become a blur at some point. So I'm like, who really has been scoring lately? And they've gotten some goals from, like Nick Bukestad, Nico Sturm, like some of those guys who are on some of the, third and fourth liners or whatever it may be. But we haven't seen as much of it as we saw at the beginning of the season, where it was like, holy cow, like every line had a point tonight or every line had 2 points tonight. And we haven't been seeing that as much lately. And I do think that depth is one of the biggest things you see that you can point to as a reason a team is successful. And so I think the fact that they haven't seen as much of that is the reason that the Wild have struggled a little bit. The other thing I will say, which isn't an option, but I do want to make the argument, is that every team goes through slumps in a season. Every team is going to lose a couple games in a row. Every team is going to get blown out by a team they shouldn't. They're
not according
to
you half the time, but sure. Yeah.
Well, they were on pace to be 82-0 at the beginning of the season. And that was just the math of it. So you can't argue with the math. But yeah. And so I will say that I'm not sitting here panicking. I'm not sitting here thinking like, oh my God, the season is over. Every team goes through this stuff. But I will say that if you want to pick an analytical reason why it's maybe not working right now, the lack of depth scoring for me seems to be an issue. Jesse, I think I know where you might go with this, but go ahead and make your argument.
I mean, obviously, all of these points are a part of it too, right? I mean, there is that routine that players are used to. I know we had talked to Nico Sturm after the Carolina game was first postponed, and he was like, yeah, I had wasted my good salmon. They're such routine players, right? Like they have to go through their things. They got to get their naps and they got to do all of this. And it sounds silly, but it's what they do. That's what they're used to. So that certainly throws a wrench in things without question. And lack of depth scoring. I mean, in general, lack of scoring a little bit in some of these latest games, which is different. But I will pick goaltending, not because I'm right on what's happening, but because this was and continues to be my only concern with Cam Talbot. He is not, I don't feel ready to be like that 1A where he can take the bulk on. I mean, you're starting to see those holes. I mean, the other game, and he was their last game that they played, I believe in Dallas. Yes.
He did not look good.
Looked awful, not just good. Like he took that accountability and he owned up to that. And absolutely. But it's like, see, this is what I was saying, right? Like I don't have that faith. And the problem is I have less faith in Kaapo Kähkönen too, right? Like, especially you're trying to find games that you can get him in because he also needs the minutes because you need to give Cam a break, but you can't give Cam a break because you don't trust Kähkönen. And that's what I've been saying about goaltending from the beginning, right? I know you guys keep coming at me about it, but I'm sticking to my point because this is now proving to be what I was saying. Like Cam is a fine goaltender again, and he has started to steal some games and I love that, but there still is just this, is he the goalie that's going to carry you through the playoffs? And I don't think so. And I don't think you have the tandem to necessarily do that. Again, if he gets back on this high horse, and I'm sure he will, that's been my concern. So I think that's probably attributing to it. I only picked that just to get on my soapbox for goaltending, really.
That's part of the reason I put that as an option, because I'm like, I know Jesse will have something to say about this, so I got to include it in here because she's going to make a few good points about this.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, that's not the sole reason. I wouldn't right away and say, oh my God, because the goaltending's been terrible. No, I just wanted to talk about how the goaltending's not great right now.
I know we got to wrap here quickly because you got to get going, but I want to ask you a quick question about this. So do you think that Cam, so obviously that Dallas game was the worst game he's had all season, without a doubt. Like,
Hands
I don't think
down,
anyone would argue that. He played not good and was a big reason. I mean, the Wild he let in 6 goals. The Wild ended up losing 7-4 with that empty netter. Do you think that game was his kind of breaking point of the season where we might see more of that? Or do you just think it was a slight anomaly, but that's still the reason that you don't have a ton of faith in him because you think he has more games like that in him, even though it might not become routine at this point?
I mean, I think it's a slight anomaly, but I also think it's to the point, it's the breaking point, right? Because he's been carrying the workload. Like, I think that's been the biggest thing in my mind is like, you're going to see more of that because you're expecting him to play so much of those games. And I just think between age, I don't know that he can handle that, like he deserves that. Right. I mean, when given the options, he's your number one without question. And last year he performed those duties very well. But again, we never saw him carry that bulk load. Not only was it a shortened season, but he had COVID and he was hurt. And so it's like, he never really took on that true 1A last year until the playoffs. And again, he did well. And I'm not saying, Cam Talbot is terrible, get rid of him and he's why they're sucking. Like, no, not at all. I'm just saying, like, I think you're seeing it. You saw a game like you saw in Dallas because of the workload that he's been put on. And we're not even there yet. We're not even through the masses of it. I mean, you look ahead to March and they were playing every other day.
We're not even halfway through the season yet. We're at game 30. I think the Wild have played 31 or 32 games. Like, we are like, we're not even really that close to the halfway point of the season. I mean, it's kind of scary.
So I had like written apology letters from all of you about the goaltending that you guys all thought was great. It's not great. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna leave it at.